Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to have you all at this event. I begin by expressing my gratitude to Dr. Jean Watson for being at this scientific meeting today. Thank you a lot. This is a historic moment for nursing in Portugal and a unique and unforgettable opportunity for many students, professors, and nurses. This table will be conducted in English, and at the time of the questions, we'll be able to help you in the interaction and translate your comments and your questions too. With a professional career of recognized and international merit, Dr. Jean Watson is a distinguished professor and Dean Emerita. For 16 years, held the nation's first endowed chair in Caring Science, University of Colorado, Denver, College of Nursing, Anschutz Medical Center campus. Founder of the Regional Center of Human Caring in Colorado, and is a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing. Founding member of International Association of Human Caring and International Caritas Consortium. In 2013, was inducted as a living legend by the American Academy of Nursing, its highest honor. It's a widely published author and the recipient of many national and international awards and honors. Dr. Jean Watson holds 16 honorary doctoral degrees. It's the author of Transpersonal Theory of Human Caring and Caritas Process of Caring Science, which are used to guide transformative models of caring education and professional caring healing practices in diverse settings worldwide. Author and co-author of over 30 books. Professor Jean Watson, it will be an honor to hear your presentation, and at the end we will make a summary and help the public to ask some questions and comments. Thank you a lot.
I prefer to stand. May I? No, here's good. So, bom dia. Bom dia. It is a pleasure and joy to be with you and to see all your faces. And I want to take this moment to recognize my family and my son-in-law who coordinated this work, Hector Rosso. My daughter, Julie, who is the executive of the Institute. My grandson from England, Gabriel Willis. My other grandson, who was born here in Portugal, Dimitri. And the privilege of the coordination of this work, and Caritas coach, Mercy, and others with whom I've been with before. So thank you. Obrigado, obrigado. So, whoosh. Take a really deep breath. And release it. And feel how good it is to be quiet, even momentarily. As you continue to breathe, appreciate yourself. Appreciate yourself and all the work that you have done to bring you here to this moment. This singing bowl is calibrated to the vibrations of the heart. So fall into your heart and appreciate yourself. This is a reminder that caring is in our heart. Compassion is in our heart. Our truth, our beauty, love, is all in our heart. It's not in our head. So open your heart and appreciate yourself and all those with whom you're working and radiate these feelings throughout this room. And gently come back into this space. So, just breathing is a reminder that we are breathing is a miracle. And at another level, do you have a handheld mic? At another level, we are the light in the institutional darkness, because we bring the light of our humanity. We bring the light of caring. We bring the light of compassion. We bring the light of our own humanity, and we are here to preserve human dignity, preserve integrity of others, and also ourselves. So, as we move through this time, this is a critical turning point for our world, as you know, as we all know this. So, as we move between this time and space, we are all participating in a new worldview. And we have to awaken to this connectedness, that we're all connected. And we're in this quantum universe. I think the pandemic awakened us to this reality that everything is connected. So we have converging directions, and we have evolving consciousness around the globe about our shared humanity and our connection with the environment. So it is a transition, and it's a time for nursing to have its own maturity as a distinct discipline, as a caring, healing, and health profession that has an expanded paradigm of unity that transcends traditional westernized science that separates us. And that's what's exciting, and that's what's unique about nursing at this particular time in the world, because the world is hungry for what you have to offer, each one of us. So, when we expand our consciousness, when we have theories, philosophy, values, core language that defines our phenomena that has been invisible, and when we have guided practices that are informed by the discipline, we then, at a very concrete level, have micro and macro practices for transforming self and system from the inside out. So this work, as I have evolved, and it has been a privilege to be with Portuguese nursing in the past and to learn together for this transition to advance the discipline and the profession of nursing. And now, as nursing matures, we have a unique disciplinary worldview, values, ethics, philosophy, etc., that guides our world and our practices, guides our personal life. And not only that, nursing has much to offer all the other health professions. If you stop and think about it, medicine does not have a philosophy to guide itself. Medicine does not necessarily have theories. So when nursing has clarity and maturity and language to advance ourselves and our profession, we are making major contributions for transformation. So we have this covenant. Much of our hospitals are based upon an industrial product line model. So when you have this grounding that we'll go through today for advancing nursing and human caring and healing and health and wholeness, we get to critique rather than conforming to what is and no longer works. When we step into caring science, when we step into the theory of human caring, we get to critique, and we have a new worldview. We have another way to see our phenomena and to language it. So in this postmodern world, if you don't have your own language, you don't exist. So nursing has been on the margin of this dominant system, which is industrial and based upon a separatist worldview. We've been on the margins with our caring, but it's been largely invisible to the dominant system. And that's what's changing. Because what's on the margin today is the new center for tomorrow. And you're it. We're it. Whether you agree or not, we're it. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to need a glass of water. So, all right. We're all at different places about learning this work. And so I'm going to give an overview of the big picture, the context of the whole framework of the theory and of the science model that holds it. Because science is changing. Science in many disciplines now have critiqued the reductionistic objectivist paradigm. We're all in this together. So the first foundation. Okay, so what I want to do is explain again why I'm using the word caritas, because it brings caring and love together. And it helps us to give a deeper ethical value context for the caring that we offer, because sometimes caring is a slogan. It's just like a trivial, like a nice little way of being. But caring and knowledge of caring is very important. It's an important epistemic endeavor. Caring is an important ontological endeavor about ways of being caring. It is an important philosophical, epistemological endeavor because it gives us new knowledge and new understandings of an expanded epistemology of use of knowledge and all the diverse ways of knowing. And it moves us from the practice, is what we think of as technical practice of nursing, to professional practice, and what I'm referring to as praxis. So it's really that context. Now I want to share with you the very latest definition of nursing from the American Nurses Association. The reason I'm sharing it with you is because in my lifetime, as long as I've been a nurse, the American Nurses Association has never used the word caring in its definition. Unbelievable. So this is the first time that ANA has included caring in its definition of nursing, which is remarkable. I mean, it's unbelievable. Because nursing wanted to advance under medical science. And caring wasn't something we wanted to own until we wake up and see how important that this is why we are here. So, but what's important about this definition are certain things like saying nursing is the integration of the art and science of caring. That's heretical. This is new. And also using new language like facilitation of healing, alleviation of suffering. This is new knowledge that nursing has acknowledged as part of our human phenomena. And also this compassionate presence and the recognition of the unity of all. This is precisely a unitary caring science framework that holds diverse theories. And one of the questions was about all these different theories, but when you get to the mature level of the paradigm, you can embrace multiple theories and begin to critique them in terms of where they fall within the different levels of the different paradigms, which is another whole process. But in any event, this is really important because even embedded in this new definition is still the old definition, which says nursing is the diagnosis and treatment of human responses, which is really a very medicalized language for nursing. And that's why the new definition is so important. So, and I would just acknowledge my granddaughter. I have a whole family reunion here. My granddaughter, Alma, has arrived, and her partner, Matt. So anyway, I'm being critiqued at multiple levels here today. So what I wanted to highlight here is I'm really reframing it. And one of my books is called Caring Science as Sacred Science. So you might really stop and pause and like, well, why is this is it sacred science? And this is my rationale, is because we deal with mystery, we deal with unknowns, we deal with a life force, we deal with the soul of another person. And actually some of the medical scientists in the States are saying that healthcare in the future will be about soul care, because we're all suffering from that medicalized, physicalized level of our treatment alone. So it's also recognizing that we dwell in this sacred circle of life and death, and now even beyond death, that we honor the continuation of life beyond death. So it's a big circle of knowledge, and there are three principles before I even go into the Caritas processes that I want you to know and to understand as sort of the ethical framework for my work as it has evolved. And I'm influenced by the philosopher Emmanuel Levinas. And he says, get this, he says, the first principle of science is the ethic of belonging before our separate being. But he goes on to say, we belong to this infinite field of cosmic universal love. That's that sacred circle of life and death, to which we come from, we belong to on the earth plane, and we return to at the full circle of life and death. So this is a very important foundation as a starting point for nursing, because this is what we have always embraced, but we have not necessarily named it or framed it this way. The other way to understand this is that Levinas says we are going to either evolve in a higher level of consciousness, or we're going to totalize all of humanity. It's a dangerous time we're in. Think about it. AI and all this is happening. So he goes on to say, there's danger in totalizing our humanity, because when you objectify another person, you're also objectifying yourself. And I'll give this example. First instance, person gets reduced to patient, right? We're already one down. Second, patient gets reduced to body physical. Body physical gets reduced to machine and technology. Without a theory, without a philosophy,
without a value system, without an ethical ideal, we don't critique that. We just conform to it. We slip into that. And when that happens, we've taken a whole human being and we have reduced them down to the moral status of an object. As soon as that happens, we can, as professionals, justify doing something to other as object we would never do to them as fully functioning person. And not only that, when we reduce another person to the moral status of object, we're reducing ourselves to the moral status of object. So this is a really important turning point and foundational philosophy, ethic, value that informs nursing and our survival in sustaining humanity and sustaining human caring, because nursing has an ethical covenant. And most of our hospitals are caught up in a customer model, a hospitality model. And this is not what we're talking about. This is a sacred covenant with humanity. So the second principle of the work that I'm doing most recently is, again, Levinas, and it's referred to as the ethics of face, is so important. Because when we look into the face of another human being, we're looking into the mystery and the infinity of the human soul. And when you look into the mystery of the other, which is infinite, it's also mirroring back the mystery and the infinity of your own soul. But not only that, Levinas says, the only way we can sustain our humanity at this very point in human history is through the face-to-face connection. So when we turn ourselves away from our own humanity and turn our faces away from others' humanity, we are in danger of totalizing our humanity. And anytime you totalize humanity, that's when you have all this dehumanization that occurs without any critique. So the theory, the philosophy, the science model gives you that framework, the ethics of belonging, the ethics of face, and the third one is the ethics of hands. Because we literally and metaphorically hold another person's life in our hands. And so this is something that goes beyond the theory, but it's really metaphysically as well as literally. Nurses offer their hands of service to humanity. And do you know that the hands are connected to the heart? So when you're doing your hands and touching another person and all those caring modalities and caring tasks, we're actually radiating love and compassion through our hands, helping to sustain that person's humanity. So you may be doing something very concrete and very procedurally technical, but underneath of what you're doing, you're preserving human dignity. You're preserving the integrity of that person. You're preserving the humanity for that person, but as you do that for that person, you're doing it for the whole system. And when you're doing it for the whole system, you're doing it for this whole society. When you're doing it for the society, we're doing it for the world. You know, there are 27.7 million nurses in the world. And if we all have this evolved consciousness, we're here radiating this higher vibration to the world. We shift the planet. We certainly transform the systems inside out. So those are the three basic principles underneath the framework of the Caritas processes. And after we come back from a break later, I'm going to go a little bit more into each one of the Caritas processes. But for now, I have a few more moments. What I want you to see is that these 10 Caritas processes, you can't read them here, I'll go through them, but they provide the language of our phenomena, of our practice. And you can take any caring moment of your own experience and find evidence of the Caritas processes in your own experience. So you begin to discover you're already practicing this theory. it's really nothing new. I'm just giving language and helping you to see something that was not visible to you before because they were invisible to the system. And one of my definitions of theory is the Latin word theoria, which literally means to see things differently. If you can't see things differently, you can't do things differently or be differently. So the first Caritas process, what I'm going to do now, because of the time, I'm going to go through each one in silence and let you just read each one of the Caritas processes and see if you can relate to it from your heart center or your own experiences. So you just kind of breathe those in for the moment, and I might add that nurses, this last one, this is one of the favorites that people really like, is allowing for mystery and miracles. And we actually have a book on miracles and mysteries that nurses have compiled, and we've compiled it through my institute. And we have some of those books available that are for sale here shortly, and I'll be happy to sign any. We don't have a large number, but for those of you that we are interested, it's just kind of fascinating to see and read about the miracles that nurses have experienced in their own practice.
I have one question. I wanted to speak about the evolution of your theory to Sete Sutras Sagrados. How, if you can explain, I think these Sete Sutras are direct to the nurses, to the experience of nurses. I wanted to explain.
So, if I understand correctly, you're asking how do nurses translate the theory to themselves? Well, to really be authentic and be in this paradigm, you really have to engage in some kind of self-care practice. You have to be involved in your own spiritual development at your higher consciousness. Because if not, we're just going through the routine. You're conforming to the status quo, and you are working from fear and control and wanting to fix everything, rather than the authenticity of how to be caring. And this starts with self. So back to the first question this morning about how do you integrate this at different levels by introducing students, work in a circle and have people authentically check in and share their own caring moments as students, so that you can become more cognizant and begin to explicate what's missing as well as what's present in a caring experience of your own. And then that gives you more intellectual and experiential opportunities to relate it to a professional situation. That's one starting point. But the other is, I have had people tell me and actually present formal programs about their journey where they have used these 10 Caritas processes for themselves, practicing each one on themselves in very ritualistic, intentional ways to deal with the grief of a loss of a husband, for example. So these are the things that happen. And then we have Hector Rosso, who's here, helping to coordinate at this occasion. And his book is on the spiritual awakening of a nurse who's lost a child, and how you use this work for ourselves. And so part of I actually have an article that just came out last year in, I think it was in Journal of Holistic Nursing, but I talk about we can't catch up with this discipline that I'm talking about until we evolve ourselves to this awareness. So we have to be the paradigm that I'm talking about. And this is a personal journey for all of us. We're all in different places. You think I know what I'm talking about? I don't. I am still learning this myself. It's an ongoing journey of awakening and giving voice and language not just for nursing, but for humanity. That's why we exist as a profession. And if we're no longer doing that, then maybe we shouldn't exist. I have had very prominent nursing leaders at the American Academy of Nursing stand up and say, it is a matter of life or death for this profession. We either advance in this paradigm and become the caring and healing and health practitioners that we've always been, but marginalized, or we maybe do not exist. And another profession will step in to meet the needs. There's no question about that. Where there's a void, something else will step in to take the void. So it's an interesting time for all of us, but it starts with self. It starts with self. It's not easy.
Thank you, Professor Jean Watson. I have a question also. We as nurses work in such a rush environment like the emergency department, the operative room, and in the ambulances outside of the streets. How can we apply the human caring theory in those circumstances? And the next question is also, we have a lot of senior nurses, older nurses that are a little bit more tired of the caring in the hospital, and sometimes it's very difficult to for them to understanding those kind of caring moments, such like aromatherapy, Reiki, humor. How can we provide some knowledge to these our colleagues, and how can we understanding them?
Well, this is a perennial universal question for nursing all over the world, because we're all trapped in this medical systems that are not really conducive to practicing nursing as we think of it. It's an industrial product line, particularly in an emergency room. So what happens, and actually quite a few nurses in emergency room have published about this, how they are actually able to slow things down and be more attentive to those moments, even in the midst of the chaos. And we also know that in the emergency room, often patients are there not because of a physical emergency. It may manifest, but it's because they're having a spiritual crisis of some kind or some emotional crisis. So being able to be attentive and read the field again under this evolved consciousness rather than just running in to do and respond to all the emergencies is like taking things more slowly to see. And, you know, time is elusive because we can slow things down and we see things differently. And when you're just running without any pause, there's no room to see anything or be different. You're just going through the routine, the industry. So that's one level. The other is the nurses themselves get burnt out, of course, and they find ways that they connect with colleagues that have a shared consciousness. So it's not so much, you can never change another person. All you can do is change yourself and your way of being and allowing, inviting. This work is always an invitation. You can't implement the tyranny of caring. You can't do the tyranny of niceness, the tyranny of kindness. This is not happening in hospitals now. The administration says, oh, we're going to be a kind hospital. We're going to be a caring hospital. So then they have this mandate. You have to be caring, and then it's so inauthentic. It doesn't work. It has to come from us authentically. And this is nursing's, this is why we are nursing as a profession. There was another thought I had, but I lost it.
Devolvemos aqui mais um tempo à assistência para fazer uma questão ou questões. A professora.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for this concept that changed many of us nurses that are older, and that read your books, your first books, your second book, and your third book. Thank you very much. But my question is, what are your thoughts about curriculum change that will help to educate the new generations of nurses?
What will help?
Was I clear enough?
Oh, how to do the curriculum? Right. Well, there are many. There are different levels of the caring curriculum. You're talking about the education model. Well, first of all, you have to invite a new form of pedagogy. So you create a different way of teaching. You're not always just like this. Like the best part of this day right now is having your questions. You will learn more from your questions than me giving all this information. But having a backdrop of the knowledge and then having opportunities for authentic dialogue about the content, because here we understand information is not knowledge. And nursing curricula are dominated by content. It's heavy content. But information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not understanding. And understanding is not necessarily integrating it into your knowing, and which would ultimately lead to your best judgment and wisdom and another consciousness. So some of the principles of a caring curriculum have been identified by Neil Noddings, who's worked with me on my board, and she was the Dean of Education at Stanford University. And she identified 4 ingredients of a caring curriculum. One is, of course, practice, but it's not practice in the usual way. It's practice of this caring in the education, in the classroom, as well as in the clinical. And so some ways of doing that are changing the nature of the pedagogy. Small groups work, circle group, laboratories that are arts laboratories versus skills laboratories, or integrate the arts in the skills. With all the simulation labs, building in the ontology of caring into the simulation labs is usually missing, so that's a really important part of making this connection. The other simple thing you can do is rename your courses. It's fascinating because language changes what we focus on. So many of the academic programs that are using this would change the name, rather than medical surgical nursing or pediatric nursing, it would be human caring with children, human caring and treatment of medical conditions, that sort of thing. So using the word human caring as a stem becomes important in creating the curriculum. But other ingredients of a caring curriculum have to do with the faculty-student relationship. The real definition of a curriculum is really the relationship between the faculty and the students. Because you can always have the hidden curriculum of what's written, but what happens in the teaching is really what makes the difference with the students. So another ingredient has to do with modeling. But this work is not modeling and trying to be like somebody else, but the faculty helping the student to model their best self of who they are. And another ingredient has to do with creating opportunities for authentic dialogue, because you have to have the opportunity for intellectual and experiential integration to learn about caring, as well as the concrete aspects of nursing. And one other ingredient is this ethical, philosophical framework that the faculty would use to guide them. And this is Nell Noddings, but she says, she uses the word confirmation. And I love it because she says, you confirm or affirm for the other their highest ethical ideal of who they are even if they can't see it for themselves at that moment. And that translates directly over to patients. Because when the nurse has that ethical ideal to hold the patient in their wholeness, even in the midst of their suffering and wounds, it's part of the model of healing. So, you know, what we learn in the classroom translates directly into patient care. So that's why the curricula have to be revised and reframed to create new partnerships and new practices in the clinical. And the other thing that becomes really successful, if you can create this, it's politics and structures, but if your nursing program can have formal relationships and partnerships, shared positions with your clinical agencies, magical things can happen, because then the nurses that are hesitant to know and do are there being educated and being co-created together. And the other thing about the clinical, which is so important, and I keep missing the point about the emergency room. One of those, I had a patient call me. This has been several years ago. And she was in an emergency room at a big hospital in Washington, D.C. And the patient was an older woman who was brought in an emergency, but she was kept on a gurney in a hallway. And the nurses were very non-caring. But one nurse was attentive to her and gave her a blanket and calmed her down and talked to her. And she said to that nurse, "Why are you different? You're different from the other nurses." And she says, "Well, I'm practicing this theory of human caring." And so this patient found out about the theory and called me to tell me the difference that she experienced because of this one student, this one nurse. So, you know, it's that kind of change that patients will know the difference when you're practicing this theory. And it starts with education, of course. Thank you. I feel like I'm sensory overloading you because there's so much of this at so many different levels and so many different ways that you can enter into it. But in very small ways, once you have your consciousness and aware the bigger picture, you can start many steps, you know, micro steps, experimenting, doing things differently, testing it out, trial and error for yourself even. Other questions or comments?
Thank you so much, Professor Jean Watson. Do you have any last questions? Alguma última pergunta? So just give us, please, your advice in one sentence. What is the future of nursing, in your opinion? Just one sentence.
Well, this is really far out. I have a new book that's at the publishers. I'm not sure they're going to publish it, but my vision of nursing is the future that you will be what I'm referring to as metaphysicians. Metaphysicians. You are beyond medicine because you're practicing human caring, which is a higher order of connecting with humanity. And when you can understand that your presence, your humanity, and you have this additional energetic modalities that help people to heal, which is very different from curing, by the way, then you have a whole new practitioner, is what's evolving, I think. So maybe we'll have nurses at different levels, very technical, but then the higher order of the advanced profession nurse will be metaphysicians, because you will know about healing. And let me just say, there's a difference between curing and healing. Healing, one definition of healing It's being in right relation with Source. Being in right relation with Source. Because healing is an inner journey. Somebody can may be totally cured of cancer, let's say, but they're not healed because that continues on. They have to come back into new meaning and new purposes, existential crisis, spiritual crisis in their life. And likewise, someone may not be cured at all and have the ultimate healing with dignity and death, returning to that sacred circle of life and death. So this too is where nursing has always located itself in terms of contributing to healing, but we haven't necessarily named it. So your touch, your presence, your comfort measures, your attentiveness to the individuality of that patient, or that person, that family, that is really what's sustaining their dignity and the way in which you connect with them. That's the human caring model in practice. So it transcends our usual way of thinking. So I invite you into this higher vision of who you are, and why are you here? What do you have to offer? You're here for a reason, so you might want to do this journeying, like what is it that I'm called to do next? Because the world needs you in this work.
Thank you, Professor Jane Watson. We understand that human care is not only a professional orientation for practice, but a personal experience, a way of life. So thank you for your clarification and your participation. Now we go to the period of coffee break. Thank you.
Thank you. I think any of you and all of you will join me in applauding and bowing to the remarkable scholarship in caring science and the theory that they have manifested and presented through their projects and through their posters. So I'm totally honored and smitten by the level of scholarship. It's almost as if you represent a full circle of knowledge, that you have integrated the ethic, the moral imperative, the relational unity worldview and the context of the relationship, the mutuality, the transpersonal, specific to pediatrics as well as to intensive care units, as well as to psychiatric units. So this work, as you said, is transcendent. It transcends setting, diagnosis, age, population, etc., disease, diagnosis. And when you are living this out through the Caritas processes, you have an opportunity, as you have manifest, to advance the formal profession of nursing that is guided and informed by the discipline, by the ethic, by the values, by the philosophy, by the theory, by the language, by the practices of the relational transformation, which becomes transpersonal. So all of this is an amazing full circle of knowledge. Also, you have introduced methodologies. So when you, it's just as we have matured in our critique of science. Early on in doctoral education in the United States, the focus was on method. And then nursing started critiquing method. Wait a minute, the method is informed by the epistemology and the phenomena. So your method should be consistent with the phenomena, ethically, philosophically, operationally, methodologically. And then as we evolved, the discourse in nursing literature in the 80s was largely critiquing the epistemology. We're still needing to critique the epistemology because we're still embedded in our science with empirical. So when you critique the epistemology, then you get to expand your all ways of knowing, and then you have different methodologies that are congruent with the phenomena of our humanity. And so phenomenology and the approaches that you take through your research becomes more expansive. And then as you have that unraveling, then you have the ethic, the ontology, informs the epistemology, informs the methodology, informs the pedagogy, informs the practice, and informs policy all the way out to transformation of self and system in our world. So these micro examples are magnificently important because in the quantum universe, these small but grand acts of scholarship have great impact. So these small acts now in this unitary field, in this quantum universe, small acts of your caring, small acts of your scholarship become big acts. Just yesterday, I was reading this little quote that small moments are not small. Little moments are not little. They have great impact. So these small acts, whether it's at the concrete level or whether it's a magnificent individual scholarship that unifies the paradigm or the philosophy, values, the theory, the science, we actually are changing the nature of nursing. And when we change nursing, we're changing these healthcare systems to become caring and healing systems. So I bow to you and I thank you for your beautiful scholarship and the privilege of hearing what you've presented. So congratulations. Yes.
So thank you for the poster winners. I now call Hector Rosso, Julie Watson, Luisa Rodrigues, Inês Costa, and Marcia Santos to join Dr. Jean Watson to tell us a little bit more about the book Miracles and Mysteries, in which the members of the Portuguese network collaborated.
Thank you. Does this still work? Not to worry.
Hector Rosso é membro docente associado ao Watson Caring Science Institute e lidera e coordena o Watson Caring Science Institute Latino-Iberoamérica. É recém-graduado do programa Watson Care Science Institute Senior Scholars. É doutorando em Ciências do Cuidado na Florida Atlantic University, foi professor e diretor do Departamento de Educação e Saúde Comunitária da Faculdade de Enfermagem e Tecnologias da Saúde da Universidade Católica do Uruguai. É formador certificado pela Caritas, tem duplo mestrado em Gestão Estratégica, especializado em Organizações de Saúde, e um mestrado em Gestão Estratégica com especialização em Gestão Centrada. Trabalhou durante 24 anos como enfermeiro em diferentes posições para o único hospital público pediátrico do Uruguai. Foi ainda diretor adjunto de um grande hospital psiquiátrico e é praticante certificado de Reiki.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Estoy muy feliz de estar hoy aquí con todos ustedes. ¿Entienden español o prefieren que hable en inglés o español? All right, perfecto, mejor para mí. Decirles que esto es un gran trabajo que se realizó con 20 enfermeros de latinos y portugueses. Lo que el libro destaca es que estar abiertos a lo que es el proceso Cáritas número 10, estar abiertos a los milagros y los misterios. ¿Cuántos de ustedes han tenido milagros o misterios cuando trabajan o cuando estudiaron? Pero cuesta en los servicios de salud, en nuestros sistemas, cuesta hablar de esto. Cuesta horrible hablar de milagros. Si nos pasa un milagro, por lo general no lo decimos. Y en la ciencia del cuidado, en la ciencia del cuidado humano, en lo que es la ciencia del cuidado unitario, realmente creemos en los milagros y en los misterios. Entonces decidimos copilar 20 historias diferentes de diferentes colegas. Y este fue una realización que se hizo después de la versión en inglés. Entonces tenemos una versión inglesa con diferentes milagros que sucedieron en Estados Unidos y algunos en Inglaterra. Y ahora tenemos la versión latina, portuguesa. La tenemos, el libro está en español y también está en portugués. Así que bueno, creo que todavía hay algunos, el que quiera puede llevarse alguno. Y bueno, le voy a dar la palabra a dos colegas portuguesas que nos cuenten en portugués sus milagros y misterios. ¿Quién quiere empezar? Ah, 3 colegas. Me había olvidado. Luísa, ¿quién quiere empezar?
Foi com muito agrado que colaborei neste livro. Pronto, eu venho da oncologia pediátrica, não é? É um serviço muito específico, muito especial. E, de facto, pelo menos a minha vivência, como da professora Paula, tivemos uma vivência, de facto, de existir muitos milagres, não é? No nosso cuidar, de acreditar no que fazemos, no nosso dia-a-dia mesmo, face às adversidades, superarmos essas adversidades em contextos muito difíceis. E foi um bocadinho a minha história que eu contei aqui, não é? Da minha experiência e principalmente foi da amizade. Pronto, tenho aqui uma colega minha de 30 e tal anos, a enfermeira Filomena, a professora Paula. De facto, os milagres é isso. As pessoas acompanham-nos ao longo da nossa vida. Por vezes há momentos mais difíceis, mas estão sempre cá, estão sempre ao nosso lado. Eu fiz um estudo há muitos anos atrás e era uma mãe que me dizia, em relação aos enfermeiros, o enfermeiro é como uma bengala, nunca me deixa cair. E, de facto, os nossos amigos, e de facto, profissionalmente também, são pessoas que ficam no nosso coração para toda a vida. E nesta vida passa tudo muito depressa e o que é agora não é a mesma coisa amanhã. E os nossos amigos, de facto, estão cá, e nos bons e nos maus momentos. E quando estão ao nosso lado, temos tudo. Pronto, é um bocadinho. E é isso também, é o que é o milagre da vida. É de facto as pequeninas coisas, e a professora Watson diz-nos isso, de facto são importantes. Tudo o que é o saber olhar, o invisível, é muito importante, não é? E por vezes há pessoas que não veem, têm pessoas extraordinárias a seu lado e não se apercebem, não é? Quando elas já não estão é que se apercebem e de facto os milagres estão sempre à nossa volta e por vezes nós não vemos isso. Por exemplo, eu venho de oncologia pediátrica, eu sei o que são os milagres porque de facto vi muitos e acredito neles. Há pessoas que já não acreditam nos milagres, eu acredito neles. Mesmo agora, onde eu estou, onde trabalho, acredito neles. Pronto. É isso a minha experiência.
Boa tarde. Também continuando aqui na perspectiva da enfermeira Luísa Rodrigues, a minha história retrata a experiência profissional do cuidar ao longo da vida, ao longo até do ciclo de vida, nascimento, criança com doença crónica, dos seus pais, e acompanhando ao longo de anos numa trajetória de doença que culminou com a morte da criança, mas respeitando as suas crenças, as suas preferências, os seus desejos e os desejos da família, o seu ritmo, os seus desejos relativamente àquilo que eram as suas preferências, não só ao longo de toda a trajetória da doença, a forma como estabelecemos uma relação duradoura com a criança, que várias vezes vão ao hospital, regressam a casa, regressam ao hospital, e que vamos sempre deixando algumas pontas soltas e que nos vamos encontrando, não é? Vamos partilhando momentos da vida, eu partilho alguns meus, porque o tempo também vai passando e a criança e os pais partilham os dela. E depois este acompanhamento ao longo da vida, respeitando até os silêncios, aqueles momentos difíceis em que apenas o olhar transmite tudo, não é? Ou sentimos, não é agora o momento, vou sair, não é? Porque nos conhecemos, porque se identificamos essas situações, porque nos conhecemos há muitos anos, e que nos ajuda também a crescer profissionalmente e pessoalmente, não é? Há aqui esta sensação de que a criança também me ajudou profissionalmente e pessoalmente no meu caminho, e que são irrepetíveis e que têm a sua unicidade e que eu também fiz parte e integrei a sua vida. Foi esta a história que retratei no livro e que me deu muito, muito prazer. Acima de tudo, há aqui um processo de autoconsciência e de autorreflexão que deve ser valorizado, que deve começar enquanto estudante de enfermagem, da licenciatura, e que deve ser desenvolvido ao longo da prática clínica. Pode-se traduzir depois numa história num livro, ou pode-se traduzir noutras situações, mas que esta capacidade reflexiva não se vá diluindo, não nos tornemos autónomos de sermos máquinas na nossa prestação de cuidados. Também temos emoções, também temos sentimentos que vão se transparecer para o cliente e que ele também nos vai fazer é recíproco, ele também tem emoções e sentimentos que nos vão influenciar. E, portanto, nos deixemos afetar e que afetemos os outros com essas emoções. E foi esta história que contei no livro e que muito agradeço o convite. Obrigada.
Bom, muito boa tarde a todos. A história que eu contei no meu livro reporta-se à minha licenciatura em Enfermagem, a uma aula muito específica com uma professora que eu tive, que foi a minha professora de ortopedia. Quando começávamos as aulas de ortopedia, começávamos as aulas com meditação. Começávamos as aulas a falar em chakras, em shiatsu, em sistema energético, em reflexologia, e nunca nenhum de nós tinha ouvido falar sobre tais coisas. Portanto, eu tirei a minha licenciatura na Escola Superior da Guarda, numa escola do interior, há mais de 16 anos. E tudo para nós era novidade, portanto praticávamos shiatsu, essas coisas todas, e para nós aquilo era tudo uma novidade. E houve um dia em que ela nos disse que para passarmos na disciplina tínhamos que fazer uma composição, e a composição era escrever de onde vim, quem é que sou e para onde vou, e quem não fizesse chumbava na disciplina. Portanto, nós ficámos um bocadinho atónitos, não é, com aquilo. Portanto, estávamos a ter aulas de ortopedia, aquilo não tinha nada a ver com ortopedia, não é? Portanto, pronto, muito surpreendidos e por aí fora. Porém, não é, ninguém queria chumbar, como é óbvio, não é? E, portanto, todos acatámos este desafio, não é? Eu fui fazendo as minhas reflexões ao longo do tempo. Tínhamos um prazo estipulado para entregar a composição, que podia ir assinada ou em forma anónima, não é? E eu no livro eu descrevo este processo de reflexão, porque eu fiquei com ele muito memorizado na minha cabeça. Porque me suscitou muitas emoções, muitos sentimentos. Eu comecei a observar os meus pensamentos, eu comecei a vê-los como um filme, comecei-me a dar conta de mim própria, das minhas crenças, de padrões de pensamento, enfim, de uma multiplicidade de coisas que me invadiam do meu mundo interno, que eu desconhecia até então e que fui ficando a conhecer aos poucos. E isto despertou em mim uma dimensão e uma sensibilidade muito maior para o meu próprio mundo interno, para a complexidade do ser humano, para a natureza também dos próprios cuidados, de serem em si próprios muito, muito, muito complexos e desta questão muito importante que é podermos refletir sobre as nossas questões existenciais. Somos seres humanos e estamos a viver uma vida que é finita, que é sagrada, e podermos dar um valor significativo e real à vida. E foi esta a minha experiência de escrita deste capítulo. E sou muito grata também por este convite. Sou muito grata por esta professora que, apesar de dedicar algum tempo das suas aulas a conteúdos que não eram de ortopedia, nos levou a refletir sobre outras dimensões que são muito importantes no ser humano. E foi isto que eu deixei aqui por escrito. Obrigada.
Bueno, muchas gracias a las tres. Antes de pasar a la palabra a Jean y a Julie, quiero decirles que en la ciencia del cuidado unitario y el cuidado humano, la parte estética es muy importante. Nosotros sanamos a través de la escritura. Nosotros sanamos a través de una pintura. Nosotros podemos sanar a través de la música y así sucesivamente. Hoy se habló en el correr del día de todo esto. Así que enfermería debe poner el foco también en los aspectos estéticos. Es muy importante. ¿Sí? Le voy a dar la palabra a Julie. You can say something about them.
Boa tarde. So I have the privilege I am the executive director of Watson Caring Science Institute, and I'm also the managing editor of Lotus Library. So I feel very blessed to create a platform that offers opportunity to give voice and language about what you are doing. So Dr. Watson talks about the margins, bringing it into the fold. So we are very passionate about story, because story is how we unite and how we connect. Everyone has a story. So I believe that that's part of that transpersonal moment of what's your story? And actually what your story from your past, how did you get here? That has relevance to your work, my work, our work. And so I'm very honored that we are a nonprofit and the board has given us the green light to publish books which have your stories. And I come from an arts background. I come from publishing and art and culture. So I was able to do some of the illustrations in the book, referring to some of the stories within the book. And what's also very interesting is the English version of the Miracles and Mysteries is totally different. It's very interesting. So I think our next project is to translate this into English and maybe translate the English one into Portuguese and Spanish, and it goes on and on. But I hope you enjoy it. And please leave, if you are in a book group, if you leave reviews online, please give stars, because then that helps us to get the word out. What's important? What's this about? Miracles? What are you talking about? It's important. So thank you. Namaste.
Well, your presence, your participation, your hospitality, your friendship, your colleagueship has just been phenomenal for me and for all of us from Watson Caring Science Institute. So I'm so honored and privileged. It's been a joyful day for all of us, I hope. And it's also a moment where we can begin to participate more actively. And the Watson Institute is a nonprofit, and we are here to be of service and to continue this work as we have witnessed already underway with the Portuguese planning group and the Caritas coaches
and Hector Rosso's leadership with this. But I also want to say, many of you reach out to me individually, and I try to do a really good job of responding to emails for those of you who may have tried to reach me. So I'm also, you don't have to all bombard me with emails, but I do honor and respond to emails if you wish to reach out to me. It's pretty easy, Jean@WatsonCaringScience.org. But also, I would like to invite you to become members of the Institute, because then you can be part of the larger community. Then you know what's happening. Then you bring your energy and you bring your new ideas, and we have benefits for you, sort of discounts and so forth, so that will really help to expand and support the continuation of the Institute. And you can just go to the website, WatsonCaringScience.org. It's nonprofit.org, not .com. And just see there's a space for membership. I think it's pretty inexpensive. So it's another invitation for us to unite in human caring, because we have started this cycle where we've been in Japan with Caring and Peace. We've been in China. We have been in South Africa. We have been in Chile. We've been in Uruguay. It's really an emergence, and now we're here in Portugal. And so this is a time for nursing to come of age and to really mature as a mature, caring, healing, and health profession that we've always been on the margin. And now we are needed more than ever, because the world doesn't all know this, and we know another way. A nursing way has new understandings of what's needed, but we need to bring it to the fullness of our profession and the fullness of our discipline as a mature, scholarly, caring science background. So I compliment you, I congratulate you, and I bow to you for all your leadership and this beautiful occasion you've created for us. Thank you. The only other thing I will say is that we also have a project in the Middle East, and I also want you to know, whether you're aware of it or not, when you are practicing human caring, you're contributing to peace in the world. It's a very important thing to know that, make that connection. And so I'm going to close with this Chinese proverb that kind of connects us with our light and our connection between caring and peace. And it's very brief. It goes like this. If there's light in the soul, there's beauty in the person. If there's beauty in the person, there's harmony in the house or the system. If there's harmony in the house, there's order in our nation. If there's order in our nation, there will be peace in our world. So take your beautiful light of human caring and go in peace. Namaste. God bless. Thank you. Obrigada, obrigada, obrigada. Thank you, Dimitri, for the photos.
Se alguém quiser agora aproveitar para fazer uma sessão de autógrafos ou tirar algumas dúvidas com a professora Jean Watson, tem 10 minutos. So we have the autograph session now, if they want it. And if you want to answer some questions, share some emotions, it's the time, okay? And then we'll end the event.
Yo quisiera decir algo en la línea que fue la doctora Watson, y es que aquí en Portugal nos representa la red portuguesa de enfermería para la ciencia y el cuidado humano, cuya coordinadora es la doctora Paula Diogo. Así que invitarlos a todos a ser parte del grupo de Portugal, y si quieren ser parte miembro del Instituto Watson, lo pueden hacer a través de La Vida, que es una membresía especial para nuestros grupos. Toda esa información lo tiene el grupo de Portugal. ¿Okay? Muchas gracias.
We're going to have a few minutes transition for questions that are lingering. it's been a long day. It's very warm, and you're probably exhausted from hearing me, at least, with all of the sensory overload of information. But I'm sure there are one or two pressing questions that are lingering that you want to take advantage of this moment before we all go our separate ways. And as we leave, don't forget, you're going to carry this with you. This day is going to linger with you, remember? Caring transcends time, space, and physicality. And what happens in this moment informs the next moment and the next moment in this unitary field. So these caring acts, these caring moments, these caring scholarship, this caring language is elevating the vibration of humanity to a higher level. So it's exciting time for us to make a difference because we matter. Okay, pause. I had a very pressing question. I don't know where she went. Do you want to say what it is and say with a microphone so people can hear you?
Hello, Professor. My name is Katerina. And the question I wanted to ask you is, what is your perspective when it comes to the technological evolution that we're living nowadays? How do you think it might affect the human caring?
That is a very critical question as a turning point in this time, which is one of the reasons we're here, to pay attention to this, because there are several levels in which you would address this very problematic issue. At one level, there's nothing wrong with technology. We all need it, and we have it. It's at another level that we have to learn to critique it rather than just conform to it without questioning. An example is that, of course, the use of computers took the experience of the relationship and the communication away from the mutuality of the human-to-human connection, unless you have a theory, unless you have a philosophy, unless you have an ethic, unless you have a value system that you can critique that and ask new questions and help us to see it differently. So there's nothing wrong with the technology, but what happens when you have technology without critiquing the human experience for the patient as well as for the practitioner is taken away from the humans and placed it onto the technology. So even the patient is not experiencing his own experience because it's placed on the technology. So that's one issue to critique and begin to unravel and come up with new solutions, which is one of the important Caritas processes. But at another level, when you have more and more layers of technology, you have more and more people that come between you and the patient, taking care of the technology in contrast to taking care of the patient and the human needs. Early on, there were actually articles written about how when the nurse would say goodbye at the end of the shift, she would say to her colleagues, don't forget to take care of the technology, in contrast to take care of the patient. But this is at a very basic level. But what you're talking about and what's being introduced now is an entirely different scenario. I was at a conference in Iceland a couple of years ago. It was an invited world leader conference. There were bankers from Switzerland. There were major religious leaders from around the world. There were the president of BMW International with something like $10 billion budgets. That was the audience. But they were saying at that conference that the humans and the planet are in danger of surviving at this point in human history. And the only way we can address this from their position was to return to the core values of caring, compassion, and love. Now, this was coming from bankers in Switzerland. That's the language they were using. But what it points out is that the worldview that we're caught in has been destructive to our humanity and destructive to our environment. And we can no longer sustain that. We see this crumbling all around us. The pandemic sort of woke us up a little bit. And even at that conference, the former president of Iceland did a closing address. And this is not about men and women, but she said to the audience, she says, "Gentlemen, the problems of the world have not been solved by the men of the world. That we need a new voice, we need new language, we need a renewed rebalancing. And this is what we offer, is this archetype of our human spirit that unites us across the globe, across gender, across differences." So that's one sort of awakening to pay attention to, is what's needed. But now we're faced with this artificial intelligence, which is taking off very, very quickly, to the extent that people are starting, scholars in the field that are the leaders are starting to say this is a dangerous moment unless we can begin to capture this and critique it. And just, I don't know how many of you are into this chat, GPT, whatever that is. You know, I've done a little bit of it. But what's interesting is what is emerging, where in the hospitals, this was just a recent article just last week, in a hospital in Washington, D.C., the mandate was for the nursing staff and for the physicians to respond to the data from the artificial intelligence chat, in contrast to their own judgment. And so what, in this one example, they talked about how they're being mandated to follow that artificial intelligence summary from a machine in contrast to their own humanity and their own intuitive knowledge of the caring processes and the healing processes and the pain level, etc. And so this article explored that and had the nurse describe how she actually would be missing the patient's needs, particularly in this instance it was about pain, because the chat summary said the patient had this summary or this diagnosis or this level of information when she knew better. So this is the kind of the critique that's coming. Now at another level, some hospitals are now starting to mandate that you override your own caring judgment and clinical judgments and go by the summary of the chat for that patient. So this is really dangerous territory in terms of the human caring surviving. At another level, if you, let me just take myself as an example. If I start putting out all my information and the chat GPT, whatever that's called, I never remember the initials. If they start collating all this information for me and putting it out, it could be a substitute for me personally. So you would not necessarily know what's authentic from my teachings or my writings if some external machine technology is collating this information and spitting it out and becomes a substitute for me or becomes a substitute for you. It's just an interesting phenomena and a fine line. I mean, obviously we're going to need technology, and there's a big, in Silicon Valley in California, everybody's crazy about artificial intelligence, but it really has its limitations. And so when you have this grounding, when you have a model of science that's grounded in unitary field and caring, you get to critique this emergence of technology in a way that other disciplines may not, including engineering and science and medicine. So anyway, that's sort of a big summary issue.
I just wanted to add, because I think it's important, one of our nurses always talks about, as nurses, we need to be in the boardrooms. We need to be in the decision-making process within the hospitals, within government, within policy. So that's why, that's our kind of the sacred activism aspect of it. We work with a hospital that is, I shall not name, but they have an amazing new hospital. But all of their technology is, guess what? In the wall. So you've got the patient on the bed, and you've got the technology on the wall. So what happens? Hi. How you doing? How are you feeling? And it's just because nobody asked. So that's why this is also important.
Yeah. So, other questions or comments about this very issue? It's so new, we don't know, it's just a big unknown territory, but it can dehumanize us. And then what happens if you start cloning humans? This is the next technology, it's already happening. Are we gonna clone a human, and is it gonna be a real human, or what's it gonna be, We're in a very slippery slope ethical time for our world. But as nurses and as peacemakers and as human-to-human caring practitioners, we're always going to need human caring, because you can't substitute for the human spirit. The technology doesn't have this human spirit. Other questions or comments? Long day. Yes.
Alguém tem mais alguma pergunta?
Leave you speechless.
So I would like to ask you to comment what I believe is an example of your recent publication, Mystery and Miracles, if I'm saying it well, that indeed greatness or gratefulness comes or is within the simplicity of the encounter human to human. And how can we explain and try to make others comprehend that when we talk about a miracle, we're not talking about like the religious miracles in which a person, you know. So how can we inspire and how can we transmit that indeed when a patient that didn't smile and that day looked at us and smiled, and somehow we established a true connection, that's a miracle. So your point of view, please.
I think it was what Whitman says, everything is a miracle. If you begin to really pay attention to life, I mean, just to be here is a miracle. To breathe is a miracle. To witness a flower, to witness the eyes and the face of another person, you know, it's in a consciousness. More recently, I've been writing about the concept of sacred activism. You know, we hear so much about social activism and protest and all that, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these acts of caring and human and sustaining and being open to these existential unknowns that cannot be explained by traditional science. That's what I mean by miracles, being open to that which our dominant worldview cannot accommodate, because it can't accommodate the human spirit and unknowns. So when you have that openness, then you have some new possibilities that you can begin to honor and to be present to and to allow for. I mean, that's the 10th Caritas process. And so I don't mean miracles. It might be a miracle in a sense that it's something that happens that can't be and isn't being explained by ordinary ordinary dominant thinking. And now we're increasingly, people are paying attention to synchronicity and things that happen that you don't necessarily anticipate, but it might be a transition. Actually, one of their doctoral students just recently, she's using the methodology called alchemical hermeneutics. And it's amazing because she's using her own journey and these synchronistic so-called coincidences that happened to her along the way of her research to inform the next step and give her some new trajectories. And it's quite magical in a sense that it opens up the underneath, what's the humanity and the underneath of the phenomena of what they're researching. It's quite beautiful. And she actually talks about how her own journey uncovered for her the concept of oppression of the sublime, or oppression of the sacred. You know, our world does that to us. Now, how do we uncover that? How do we see that? That becomes a miracle. That becomes a beautiful, a caring moment. The other thing she moved toward, once you are in this phenomenological hermeneutic spiral, which it never ends, you keep evolving, she moved toward the notion of the heart. And she actually ends up with the Sacred Heart as the source of our humanity. It's pretty powerful stuff. You know, it's not for everybody, but using a Rogerian science, using caring science, using a methodology that allowed her to follow her phenomena, that in itself is kind of a miracle and a mystery of itself, opening up new space for something new. So I'm probably sensory overloading you. I don't know what else to touch on, because there's so many different levels of this work. You can enter it wherever you start, and it keeps growing and expanding from your own starting point.
Thank you so much, Professor Jean Watson, for being here with us today and for sharing all your knowledge and insights. Thank you. Então, depois deste dia repleto de reflexão, de aprendizagem, vamos dar por encerrado o nosso evento. Vou pedir a colaboração da professora Emília Coutinho e da enfermeira Márcia Santos para me acompanharem nesta fase. Gostaria de partilhar que a sessão de encerramento será constituída por duas fases. Numa primeira fase, uma síntese daquilo que foi experienciado ao longo do dia, seguinte-se de uma surpresa, e por isso pedimos que se mantenham connosco até ao final. Obrigada.
Também olhar-nos aqui, olhos nos olhos, e fazer esta ética da face e procurarmos praticar mais isto no nosso cuidado humano. E vamos convidando a todos para que se possam levantar, para que se possam movimentar, para que se possam cumprimentar, esticar, abraçar, por que não? Dar um beijinho, um sorriso, uma palavra qualificadora. Passamos aqui um dia tão repleto de emoções, com tanta teoria sobre o cuidado humano, e aproveitar um bocadinho para praticar. E aqui eu convido-vos a que realmente se junte aqui o Hector, a professora Paula, Diogo, por favor, se junte aqui conosco, e que se juntem os membros da Rede Portuguesa da Ciência do Cuidado Humano e todos e que nos possamos cumprimentar todos e que possamos celebrar todos, ou aqui no palco, porque o palco é sempre de todos, ou por aqui, e possamos celebrar este momento todos juntos, com muita alegria, com muita emoção, e viver de facto este momento único que nos possa transbordar de amor, de carinho, de afeto, e que possamos levar este dia assim, de coração cheio. Sim? Pode ser, antes de irmos embora? Um abraço, um beijinho. São todos convidados a vir ter aqui conosco. Nós estamos aqui todos e obrigada por este dia. O Pedro pode aumentar o som, se faz favor? Agora não é momento para vergonhas.
Meu telefone acabou a bateria.